Welcome to Mind Your Heart podcast, your favorite corner of the internet where we chat about all things mental health. I'm Emily.
And I'm Trina. Together, we're like your real life Lorelai and Rory Gilmore. Each week, we'll bring you real conversations about the world of mental health, and we will peel back layers on topics like anxiety, depression, and much more.
We're here to chat with you about the tough stuff, the everyday stuff, and everything in between. So grab your emotional support water bottle, I know we have ours, find your comfiest chair, or keep your eyes on the road, and let's get into it. Are you ready, Mom?
Absolutely. Join us as we mind our hearts and hopefully make minding yours a little easier. Welcome back.
Welcome to Mind Your Heart. Today we have a very special guest. Teresa is here with us. So thank you for joining us. Say hi.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. And Teresa also has a podcast. Teresa, do you want to share what that is?
Yeah, it is Homeschool Mama Self-Care Podcast, which is also on YouTube and all the podcast players.
Yeah.
Cool. And we'll have that linked for everybody who wants to check that out. It'll be in the description. If you're watching on YouTube, it'll be down there too. So yeah.
So cool. All right. So we are talking about mindset specifically for homeschool. That's your thing, right? You're a homeschool, like kind of a homeschool coach, correct? Like tell us a little bit about yourself, like introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm a certified life coach and I graduated as a homeschool mom myself. I homeschooled for almost 2 decades for children. And before that, I was an RN before I had my family. But as a certified life coach, I've moved in toward all the life challenging things, the wellness and mindset challenges. So it's not just about curriculum and all the basic, beginner questions. In fact, I trend not to answer those or go toward that discussion area because it's the entry level stuff. So I'm often speaking to moms in the 3 to 4 year and beyond range and helping them deal with various things, whether it's leaning into child inspired learning and deschooling their unhelpful school mindsets, or dealing with their relationships and their boundary challenges, or addressing different things like obviously self-care and their wellness and how to take care of themselves, developing who they are beyond the mom role and their purpose beyond the mom role.
Mm-hmm.
All those sorts of areas. Yeah.
All those things, like I'm like
Couple
I would
things.
I'm thinking to myself, I'm so interested in all of them. Like I love the idea of deschooling. I've heard it called unschooling. Is that the same?
No, deschooling, unschooling is like a method of educational delivery.
Okay.
Deschool is more coming away from the unhelpful school mindsets that we have. And based on our conversation before, I'm like, I think you're definitely full in there. You've been
Yeah,
there. Yeah. And
I
then, to be fair, I still feel like I'm doing that even after I've homeschooled, that I still see elements of, I think it's personal autonomy
have.
that our culture doesn't really support, and becoming who we were meant to be and living our lives purposefully on our own terms. And when you lean into that, then you look at the things that you did, like in the school, and you say, why? Like, what was the purpose of that? It serves the system, not the child.
Yes. Ah, yes. I feel like I've just met a soulmate. Like
Yeah,
I have a chill.
I
I'm
thought so too.
serious. But yeah, that is I know I totally understand that and get that and feel like there are so many things that where we're not focusing on the child and the benefit of the child discovering who they are and what they love and what they're good at and
Yeah.
stifled. And then I was speaking to someone recently and they were saying to me, because I was telling them like I really want to make this pivot because I have been running into this wall with teachers basically, I can't do that. I'm not allowed. I have to follow the script. My district says, my principal, all the
Yeah.
things. And I'm like, well, I want to talk to parents then because I really care about kids loving to read. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm very passionate about that. And I feel like some of the things that we've done in the school system has actually hurt our children's like love of reading. And
Yes.
and then she's like, well, you know that homeschool parents just want workbooks and dictated scripts. And I'm like, I don't think that's true. I'm like, I don't think that's true. So I think it's interesting for you to say that, that you are like talking about those kinds of hurdles. And so yeah, I think that's interesting.
Well, yeah, I actually resonate with what that other person said to you because that was certainly my story in the first 3 years. I figured like I can just out private school to private school and we're just going to sit
Yeah.
down and do the things. And I did. And it was a fabulous education for me. But it was an education not just in the practical things that you might learn in a typical school, but also an education in learning that this isn't the way kids actually learn. And even the kiddo, because she's all grown up now, the kiddo, so my oldest two are very different, said everybody. But one of my kids is the compliant, like I want to always do things the way that you want it, mom approach. And so even that kiddo said it was too much. Like you were just trying to do every last thing. And I'm like, that's really true. I was. So I actually resonate with the trying to do the scripts. Just tell me what is the best curriculum, best routine, give me all the things. And then I'm done. I've got it figured. Except by year 3, year 4, I remember waking up late and my kids were up. I could hear them in the kitchen, and I had this cup of coffee that woke me up beside my bedside. So my kids were trying to wake me up with a cup of coffee, which it usually did. But it was cold. I'd slept through. I can hear the kids talking, arguing in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And there's like, I come out there and I can see that the two oldest are trying to create breakfast for the others. And that was really lovely. Um, and also, there's like drops of pancake batter everywhere. They're fighting over the flipper, who's going to flip the pancake. And then we're going to go into, I finally, actually, it got a little crazy. And I remember trying to corral that energy, and it was superhuman energy to corral that energy. But I did, even though I had a headache. It was probably premenstrual, possibly. It was slump month, and it was gray outside. We get into the circle time, the first hour or half hour or so of our morning. And God, imagine this. I've got like a 10, 8, 3, and a baby, or maybe a 4 and a 2-year-old at this point.
Wow.
And so trying to corral everybody, and I'm not feeling good in the first part of
Yeah.
the day anyway. And then I'm sitting in the family room there, in this house where we didn't even live. It was in northern British Columbia. We were traveling. And I remember feeling like, okay, we're here. We're going to do circle time. I've rescued this Monday. And then a fight breaks out, something about who's sitting where or who has the Lego piece, or I'm just like randomly giving you an example, which I'm sure you understand, because there were so many possibilities. And I just remember feeling really intense, but I remember hearing someone yelling, stop, like just stop, and possibly other words, but I don't remember all the words. And then I realized, oh, that was me yelling. And so I had to turn on my heels and leave the room because I knew that anything else I'd say wouldn't be beneficial. And so
Yeah.
I left the room. And some days I didn't leave the room without,
Yeah.
before. But anyways,
Saying something not beneficial. Yeah.
and so then I left the room and I texted madly to my husband. He wasn't available at the time. I texted to my friend, rant texting, and felt more angry as I was doing it. And my friend interrupted it and said, you should watch this TEDx talk that went viral yesterday. And I did. And this woman in black chunky shoes and a, jean jacket and this cute blonde coif, kind of like yours, actually,
Yeah.
was talking about how she is, and this is what I remember receiving from it, that that she didn't know who she was, or she didn't understand this narrative in her story about how shame was contributing to her inability to be her authentic self.
Hmm.
This is Brené Brown.
Oh yeah. I was just gonna say
Yeah.
Brenda Brown. Yeah.
Yes, and
I
it
love her.
completely it shifted everything for me so that I went from this really intense, frustrated space, not addressing my emotions or my needs, not even knowing who I was, to moving toward what I needed and who I was and my identity. And that moment, anyways, if I can back up a couple of minutes here, that was the one that shifted everything for me.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting and so like really cool as well because it's like it's sometimes it takes that kind of shouting moment or that moment of chaos to figure that out about yourself. You're like, I'm going down this, why am I trying to create this one thing? Why am I doing it this way? Why have I put us all in this box? Like we got out of this box on purpose. And
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
but yet I'm still doing that. And then you're not finding any joy or any happiness. And then
That's right.
you can't show up for your kids when you feel, or not in the way that you want to, when you feel that way about yourself. So I think that like is such a, it's such an important moment for us to have. I mean, I wish that it would come easier and not in the middle of,
Yeah, me too.
yeah,
Yeah,
but it doesn't
100%.
often work that way, unfortunately. So I think I mean, the point is to come to that, like to come to that realization that we don't want things to go on in this way for anyone in the family. Like, what do we need to do to, help the family, grow and flourish, and
Right.
you as well, even as the person that's, providing the source. I mean, they like have allowing them to like discover, because it's funny, the whole time you were telling me about like setting the scene with the kids in the kitchen with the pancake batter, and
Mhm.
maybe they're fighting, but they're figuring it out. They're figuring out how to work with one another. All these things are happening that they were already doing, and you didn't feel like school started until you got to circle time. However,
Yes.
like really are happening.
Yeah.
So I think that sometimes we don't even realize, we're like, look at the skills that they're learning just by cooperating and figuring out how to make pancakes together.
Or
So
arguing, because then the arguing too, even
yeah,
though I think that might be the hardest thing about homeschooling is hearing the constant bickering or, stuff. But what I've learned, I mean, when I can just take a bigger look over what's really going on, they have to learn to negotiate relationships and deal with conflict. And they learn to deal with conflict, but it also helps them to figure out who they really are all at the same time. So it's a requirement for them to do that. It's rather unpleasant listening to it.
for sure. For
Uh-huh.
sure. It's uncomfortable. And it's like what kids are learning, like negotiating and
Yeah.
things like that we are not thinking of in the moment, because you're right. It is uncomfortable. And it's like, please stop. Like, let just stop, just be quiet.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It
what
brings up triggers, like
yes,
our own
yes.
triggers. And I'm actually literally listening to right before our conversation, Shefali Tsabary's book, The Awakened Family.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one. I need to look at that.
And I realized that the things she said, I don't recommend parenting books generally because I think the concept of parenting is not helpful. It's a very top-down approach of here's who I am and I'm going to tell you what to do. No, I just want you to know, Emily, just for the record, I've totally done that with my kids. 100%. My kids I've got two, and one is presently at home. And if she heard me saying that, she's like, "Silly, is that how you?" But at the same time, I've learned that it's a fantasy that we've been kind of told that like you need to do something for your children. And this Awakened Family, Shefali Tsabary's book, speaks a lot of what I've written in my book or what I write in my courses about you as the center, you understanding that who you are and how you handle the challenges that you have or how you communicate, you addressing your triggers, all of those things. It is the natural role model, and
Hmm.
you are the center of that. And that is parenting to me. Parenting isn't, and now here are the things you need to do in order to, teach your child how to do something, even though I do default to that naturally.
Yeah. No, I think that's really interesting, because I feel like it's the moments that I didn't even realize. Like my kids recently, Emily and my son Jackson, he's
Mhm.
20. They have a mindset coach, myself, and she, besides Emily, is also like she's very wise for her 24
Mhm.
years. Um so anyway, so
Your mom's fawning over you right
yeah,
Yeah.
now.
yeah. So they're very like they've been very helpful, but they create my person has helped create these little short videos of things that my kids like appreciated about me, and like all these different prompts. And I was in shock of the things that they said, because it was like the accidental parenting moments.
Yeah.
It was the modeling of like going through a really difficult transition when we were all a family, and then I got divorced, and like what that looked like. And then also where I left the school system and was like, I'm gonna build a business for myself based on of kids loving to think and read and learn and trying not to give up, even though times are sometimes hard. And so it's like things that I didn't even realize that they were picking, you know what I mean? That they were picking up on and that they said,
Absolutely.
yeah, that I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, this was, wish I feel like we're better and not, and some of those moments are, I mean, like, I wish that we didn't have to experience some of those
Yeah.
moments, but,
Sure.
but also like teaching kids or showing kids perseverance and, grit and determination and courage and all those things that we want kids, we want kids to understand those feelings and that way of being and that,
Yeah.
that's a part of who they are. But I mean, I guess, sometimes they do learn. I mean, I don't know. I told my brother recently, he's going through like a difficult time himself, and I said, your son is getting the best. He's getting ready to watch you as like a phoenix rise above this. And I'm like, and you're going to show him how not to give up, how to keep going, how when things get hard, this is what we do. This is how we
Yeah.
move forward. And I'm like, that is so much more powerful than any materialistic thing you've ever given him.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So I think that I love that. Emily, do you want to talk? I'm sorry. I've like been.
Yeah, well, so what I was gonna say is I just feel like that like kids if just from such a young age like are almost not given enough credit of like how like they do learn and what they do see. And I think that that is where like there are issues when it comes to like parenting that we see now like of people like, oh, you should do this or you should do that. Like like Teresa, what you're talking about is like a relationship. Like you're talking
Yeah.
about like showing the child a relationship and they are a human. You're valuing them as their own person, which is something that like I always am like when I have kids, like I want to do, obviously I'm not going to be perfect in any way, but I'm like that's like what I want to try to do the best that I can because it's we we look at somebody that's smaller and like less knowledgeable and we're like, okay, well, we need to teach you this, this, and this, but also like teaching somebody something is doing it with them, like is being there through it and supporting them in that way and showing them that they are valuable. So that way, when they go into the world, it's not like this big shock that they're like not being told what to do every 5 seconds because it's
Hmm.
not how we live. And it feels like such a transition whenever you actually go into the world and you're like, oh, shit. Like,
Come
okay,
on.
wait, I got to figure
Mhm.
it out. Yeah, like I need to problem solve. And that's something that I see in my generation. I'm like, nobody knows how to just figure it out. Like it drives me insane. I feel I constantly say this. I'm like, I was given the gift of problem solving because
I used to say that, yeah.
yeah, she used to say that. And
Yeah.
I at the time I was like, okay. But now I'm like I look at people who are even a little bit older than me, but like still in my age range and they're like, "Well, I just don't know what to do." And I'm like, "Did you try? Like, did you do something to see if it worked and maybe it doesn't and then try something else?" So, yeah, I don't know that I feel like that was a rambling, but it's just like
No,
going
well, actually,
into
I I get
into
that
that.
because that's one of the dynamics of the education system is that there is a
Hmm.
top-down effect, and there is
Yeah.
you couldn't learn unless there is a teacher to teach you. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying that you always can do it independently. And sometimes you need assistance or mentorship, but you couldn't learn unless someone taught you. You only know what to learn until someone tells you, and then you're going to process it in the way that you're taught to do it. You can't think outside the box. You can't come up with your own answers.
Yeah.
So I think when you hear those messages all the time, then you are following and you don't think of what could I do? How could I lead this even? Or what could I just do
Hmm.
independently?
Yeah, and subliminally like that's teaching kids from a young age that they like need to be controlled. Like
Yeah.
always. And like if they're not, then they can't do it right. And that breeds horrible relationships when you get older.
Yeah. Yeah. And you
Yeah.
can shift it though. Having said that, you can shift it because I'm essentially telling you my own story that I very much thought that the benefit would be to create this ideal, essentially a school at home, though I wouldn't have called
Mhm.
it that, but that's
Yeah.
what I was doing because I thought it was the best thing. I actually come from a really tough family background, like from childhood, domestic violence. And so then for me, creating a perfect world was my goal, like some form of homeschool utopia. And it didn't happen. Shock, but I really was going for that. That's actually why my website's called Capturing the Charmed Life, because that was my goal. And so I was trying to create that utopia. And fast forward a couple decades, I can see that was never going to happen. But what was going to happen was being invited into a growth journey over the course of parenting,
Mm.
not even
Yeah.
just 2 decades. I think it's an indefinite, no matter how old your kids are,
Yeah.
but into a growth journey alongside your kids. And that was not part of, my formula for a charmed life. I thought I had to take control over it, but I realized that it wasn't about control. It was about yielding or listening or just learning. And that does not sound fun. When people in coaching ask me, well, just tell me what to do. Not
Yeah.
everyone says that, but some people do. I'm like, I can't tell you what to do because I've had
Yeah.
teenagers, so I already know that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And also, it has to come from within. You have to know for
Yeah.
sure that this is the right thing for you.
Yeah. Has to be your decision.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
Hmm.
then
no,
you grow up to be independent.
you're
Yeah.
right.
Hmm.
And I love the thought of like the growth journey because I feel like I don't know if you feel this way, Emily, but I feel like when our family changed, when the family dynamics changed,
Mhm.
that is what happened with I felt like the three of us, like my son and my daughter and myself, is I didn't have any I had no choice. So even if I wanted what I originally intended and wanted to happen for a family and a loving marriage and kids happy and wasn't going to be the reality. So
Yeah.
I had no choice but to shift into a growth journey with the kids
Mhm.
because we all were figuring ourselves out and like coming out of like some trauma and like
Yeah.
trying to understand what do we do next? How do we survive and how do we rebuild? So
Yeah.
yeah, I really
What did you do at that point?
I what did I do, Emily?
I mean, like, I think the biggest thing, like you did in the beginning, was ask for help.
Mm.
Which I think like was so hard for you because like I think you're naturally an independent person. Like naturally like you know what to do. You want to get it done on your own. Like we're both stubborn in that way too. To a point where like, oh no, like we'll figure it out. But like you really released that and was like, I need help and it's okay that I need help. And you leaned into the community that you had built. And that, I mean, like, and I know that you'll agree with me in saying like there were miracles that came out of that. Like there were things, ways we should not have survived certain things, but we did. So I feel like that was like the biggest thing. And that in and of itself is such a valuable lesson for anyone because asking for help is hard.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
it feels it's vulnerable, it's raw, like it's uncomfortable. So like doing that in a stage where you're still healing from trauma and abuse and everything's still chaotic, like just shows so much. So that's what you did.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting that that's how you see it. And I see it as like I just had to move forward. I had to move forward. I had to keep going. I had to keep us afloat. But the big thing in my mind was always it wasn't about me. It was about, my kids. It was about my children and how I needed to make it okay as much as I could for them. That
Mhm.
and I mean I did have a lot of like, I did like, had a lot of negative self-talk going on, like, I felt very like a failure, I felt like I had failed them and that, it was they didn't get what I had hoped for them to get, and that it was hard, and that we were gonna go through,
Yeah.
challenges, but the whole time, I'm like, I just kept feeling like, I've got to figure this out because I have 2 people that need me to. Um,
Yeah.
it didn't c even become it has, it's just recently that my son moved out. Like, I mean, this is my second year of being like an empty nester. And
Mm,
that hit me.
that goes out to you.
It hit me hard.
Hard.
Yeah, it was very hard. Yeah, I had to talk because I have a psychiatrist. I have depression and anxiety and
Mhm.
ADD, um, all the things. And I was like, I'm struggling. This is not like this is going on longer than I feel like it might for some people. And not to compare myself, but I'm really having a hard, and I read books and it was hard to find like some quality things as everything was marriage. Like lean back into your marriage, lean into your partnership and your relationship. And I'm like, well, I don't have that. So what does that mean? Lean into nothing? So it was really, I felt like I lost a little bit of my purpose. And then
Yeah.
but it was almost like, well, now you actually have the space and the moment to like breathe and think
Mhm.
about the parts of you that you can nourish. And so I guess in a sense I've reached out again because now I have two people, that one of which is Emily, two people that I meet with and talk to on a regular basis, and with mindset kinds of things, because I went to counseling for years and years, and I love her. She changed my life. She saved my life. And but she retired. And
Mhm.
so, but the thought of going through counseling all over again, I was like, oh, that just sounds so hard. So this mindset like coaching has been more the right fit for me, because I don't feel
Mhm.
like I need to revisit like every single traumatic thing that's
Yes.
happened to
Yeah.
me. But
You're
yeah,
here
but
now, and where are you
yes,
going forward?
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I might have done an equivalent amount of therapy as well. And it actually was very, very helpful and had dramatic shifts for me. And also, there's something about coaching, or when people incorporate coaching into therapy or mindset. My YouTube channel is the Wellness and Mindset. I think, is this the right? Wellness and Mindset Coaching for homeschool moms. And for me, I see that coaching has this potential for being present and forward thinking. There are times though where you can say, okay, you're stuck there. So where did you first get stuck? And then going back and then addressing that is useful to go forward. But I find coaching really useful to propel forward.
Yeah. No, I
Mm-hmm.
love that. So how do, when people find you, like what is your initial, like how do you find the people that you're serving?
Well, they find me on the internet.
Oh,
Um, I have a podcast that I put out every week. I have yesterday's was about decluttering our homes, our homeschools, our minds, and our relationships. And and then I do a weekly YouTube channel or video, and then I'm on socials doing lives and all sorts of different things on other people's podcasts in various conferences, things like that. So people find me. Sometimes they've been following me for a good long time, and sometimes it's just random, like I need somebody and I need someone to walk alongside me. I really see, and it was only after I think months of my husband saying, something about my counseling work. And I'm like, well, I'm not a counselor officially. And in this province, I could be deemed that, but I don't, I self-identify that way. And then he's like, but you're actually doing that. He's an emergency physician himself. So also does counseling in a different capacity. But I'm like, actually, that's what I do, is some sort of counseling and coaching. And because I unschooled, at some point I realized that I probably have enough unschool hours or unschool therapy hours, if that was a thing. It's not. But I think if you could qualify as a therapist, how many hours of actual therapy for yourself do you need to do?
Mm-hmm.
yes, you're right. You're right. And it's,
Not official, of course.
no, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that I love that it's opened the door for more people to do it, that there isn't just this one
Mhm.
path to counseling or
Yeah.
that kind of work. You don't just have to go to school, get your master's, even get a doctorate, whatever. You don't have to do it in that exact way. There's other opportunities, because sometimes people are really just almost a natural. Like you seem like just a natural at talking about, counseling kinds of things. Like I felt I'm like, am I having a therapy session? Like I thought that for a few minutes in the podcast, but because you have instantly make it feel safe, you
Mhm.
instantly make it feel like I can talk, and that is a gift. But I also think that, Emily, I also think that same thing of you. I think you do the same thing. And so I think that's really cool to get to share that with other people, and it not having to be like officially counseling or whatever. Because,
Mhm.
even when I was a student sports specialist for a couple of years,
Mm.
um, out of the classroom, and I worked with, kids that were in trouble. But
Yeah.
I the part that I hated the job. The part that I loved about the job was the kids. And,
Yeah.
it I felt like I was counseling. We would have these conversations, and I would understand why the behavior, and nobody everyone's like, "Who cares about that? You need the consequence, a consequence." And I'm like,
Right.
"Yeah." And I'm like, "No, we have to understand, or we will never reshape the behavior." And I'm like, "So we have to find out what's going on, because people don't just yell and throw chairs for no reason. They're trying to tell us something. So let's give them the opportunity to tell us." And so
Yeah.
that was the best part of the job. That was the part that, and people would get mad and frustrated. Oh, they're just going there to talk. And I'm, yeah, you know what? Maybe they need to talk. So I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's like, well, you're not the guidance counselor. You're the student support specialist. And so they always have to put you in these boxes, but
Mm.
you don't have to be. You don't have to be in them.
Yeah. I don't know what your story is, Emily, like why I'm curious what your mom was referring to us as having a natural gifting in a certain way. Do you see it as something that you came into the world as, or is there certain Enneagram type or Myers-Briggs type, or, something that you identify that is the basis for your abilities?
Yeah, well, my Enneagram is a 2,
Me
and
too.
I'm and I am an INFJ in the
Me
Myers-Briggs.
too.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. That's so funny.
Not
Yeah.
surprising to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of feel like I people have told me for a long time, they're like, "Oh, you should be a counselor." And when I was younger, it was like, "You should be a teacher." And I was like, "I'm never being a teacher because I know what that entails and I don't want to do
That
that."
was me too.
Yeah. And then when I got older and people are like, "Oh, well, you should be a counselor," because I was always like, people call me like the mom of our friend group. Like I was the one people went to, like if they needed something, if they needed to talk or vent or whatever. Like I was that person, and I always remember being like, oh, I don't want to do like that much school. Like that just like sounds like so much. And eventually I realized I didn't want to go to school after high school at all. And then I was like, well, I do really care about listening to people, and I've had my own like journey with mental health that I'm like, I can't, that is what I want to focus on, but I'm like, I don't want it to have to be in this way where I have to go to school and like put it get so much in debt and like all
Yeah.
these things, and also like be tied to another system. I guess
Mhm.
that was kind of like my mind. I was like, I don't really want to be like in another system.
Mhm.
And then after like becoming a business owner, I was like, actually, I could be a coach and nobody can tell me I can't do that without a degree.
Yeah.
So it just like I feel like it did like come naturally, but it was like the way that the world viewed it gave me resistance, which I feel is kind of like why it took me to this point to get to it, if you know what I mean.
Tell me more. I'm curious about that. Do you mean like the life story that you've had that's influenced how you, show up as a coach? Is that what you're meaning?
No, I guess I feel like when I left high school, I think I was confused, which we all are at that age. But I really thought I would go to college. Like it was it was something I was on the path for forever.
Mhm.
So when I got out and I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna work and see how this goes, I felt like there was a lot of like energy fighting against me in me being able to do what I really wanted to do, which was the more creative
Mm.
part of helping people and being there with people and like forming connections in that way. But it was a lot of like, well, you're going to end up going back to school, or you have to take this course to do this, or you have to have this certification or whatever it was. And in my mind, like I've never been a black and white thinker. Like I function in the gray. Like that's just how I feel about myself. So whenever people were like, you should be a counselor, and I'm like, meh, I don't want to do that, but I also like don't want to not help people. It
Mhm.
was like my brain couldn't fully get in the gray because it was so much of like, here's the black and the white. Like this is what you should do. And if you don't do either of those options, then who knows what that looks like? Because it didn't really exist. It was like I kind of had to create it for myself in the environment that I lived in. Like I didn't grow up knowing anything about like life coaches. To me, like
Mhm.
that was not a thing. So I'm like,
And it
it was
wasn't a
like,
thing, though, I think.
yeah, no,
20
yeah,
some
for
years
sure.
ago, it was a thing officially, but not known at all. We're very much in the pioneering days of coaching.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. And so it was kind of like, oh, I have to make it. And
Yeah,
I feel like I don't know. I kind of feel like that's been my story with a lot of things is like, it doesn't exist. Well, I'm gonna
I'll make
create it
it.
now. Yeah, it'll exist
Totally
soon.
resonate with that too.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that because
Yeah.
that part of me, I'm like, ooh, that's also me. And
Yeah.
sometimes I look at how I've done things. When I started homeschooling, there were two options. I could do essentially under the umbrella of the province's education system, but do it
Mm,
at home, or else do it entirely independently with no hands on what I'm doing. And I'm like, well, I'll just
mm,
do it by myself. Like, why would I
yeah.
have any involvement?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was me. But I think I look at it and I say, why
Mm,
was it that I was trying to do? And even before, I remember having significant memories of family challenges early on. I can remember way back and thinking I was just always not out of the box thinker. So I think it was
mm,
always there, just waiting to be
yeah.
fed and nurtured.
Yeah. When do you think that like it really hit you that you were like, okay, like I'm gonna lean into this almost like this knowing that you've had about yourself, but you kind of were it was like society's leaning you one way or other. What made you feel like, okay, I'm gonna give in to this?
Well, I mean, there's been many iterations, is the true answer. I refer to that one story because it applies to the homeschool world
Yeah.
about the coffee and the pancakes.
Mm-hmm.
But I have had many significant iterations. There was a moment in 2004 where there's a really significant marriage hit for us where we're like, no, we can't do marriage this way anymore. And
Mm,
in that compelled counseling for me. And in the counseling, I came to understand that I had never advocated for myself at all. Like I wasn't aware of who I was.
yeah.
I wasn't someone separate in my family systems. And when things began to shift with my husband and I, then it began to shift with my approach to my parents, so that I was no longer willing to be in that codependent little bubble. And that was like earthquaking because like
Yeah.
you, Trina, at the time, I was like, I don't ask for help. I don't do that. I just play the role of what I'm supposed to, and I don't do things outside the box. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, that was like the beginning of, okay, we don't have any choice now. You have to own who you are and what you're really about. That shifted everything in every element of my life.
Yeah. How like tell me more. I'm like how did it? Because I'm like I feel like it's different for so many different people, and in my head I feel like you're telling me like it was like different parts of you like got to
Mhm.
come out in
Yeah.
different moments in
That's
life.
the essence of it is I came out of the closet and I became a me. Well, I mean, my reality, my backstory is that it isn't just my family of origin that was steeped in this, unhealthy approach to relating.
Mm,
I also have the entire community before that that's supporting that system, and I had to come away from that as well.
yeah.
Um, the it was terrifying. Like it was
Yeah.
like, truly terrifying because not only did that happen, but then it started to help me see why I was engaging in my religious community at the time the way I was, and all of a
Hmm.
sudden that was like, nope, I'm not showing up in that anymore. And it doesn't
Yeah.
make sense to me the way that it did. It was all terrifying for me, but there was almost like not a choice. Like I had to
Mhm.
be congruent or I was going to drown. Like I
Yeah.
had to figure out who am I really and how does this work in every aspect of my life. So to me, it's not like, oh yeah, this looks enticing. For me,
Yeah.
I had to, or else how would I survive? Yeah.
Yeah. Like it was like it looked like crap. You didn't want to do it, but then you
Yeah,
you went into it and then
exactly.
you did do it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes we have to be uncomfortable or in some
Mhm.
kind of pressure to like really grow and to try something different. If not, we'll just continue going along in our, well, maybe that's just true for me. I'll continue going along in my patterns, but being uncomfortable or being in a situation where I'm like, nope, I have no choice but to figure it out.
The beauty of hard things.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the crap, I actually have goats and chickens. And I see this now practically that there are piles of crap in my
Mm.
homestead, on my homestead. And if they're aerated and watered and given some sun, they actually turn into some very nourishing compost for the garden. And even though, especially for our kids, if you could give me the option of doing the following, I would not give them a pile of crap.
Yeah.
You could not actually convince me to, but it would be good for resilience. I'd be like, also no. I'll
Yeah.
just and yet I can see in my own life and also now because they're older, I see in their lives that actually that pile of crap can become some remarkably nourishing compost for their life.
Yeah.
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 That's actually beautiful.
Mhm.
And we're
Yeah.
talking about crap.
Yeah.
I know.
We're talking about crap.
Yeah.
I love it.
I do
Yeah.
too. Okay, so I know that we're like coming up at the 45 minutes. So I want to make sure that you've gotten a chance to say anything that you want to say, and also ask if you would be willing to play like a quick lightning round. Um, yeah, okay. So first of all, you mentioned your podcast, and so now we know how to find you, and that is exciting. So that's good. Is there anything else that you want to share about the work that you're doing or the work that you do offer, or yeah, anything like that?
The only thing I would say in addition to that is what I see, and this is really like my personal passion project. Every person that comes to have or spend time with me, they have very unique stories and very unique reasons for showing up. Um, and yet it feels to me that I'm here to support them to become who they're really meant to be and to own who they are, own their voices. And that's my passion. At first glance, you go, oh, she's a homeschool coach. So she's going to help me figure out my curriculum and my routine and all that. And I can do that. And I do help you do that, but I'm always going to point you back to what really matters. And it is the child in front of you and who you are, what really matters to you. So that's what I would say as an addition.
Yeah,
Mm.
I love that. I love
Yeah,
that.
me too.
Okay, so these are just for fun.
Yeah.
On a scale from 1 to 10, how good of a driver are you?
Excellent. One of my kids would be like, you do rolling stops? Because they're all either have their drivers or else they're in the place of about to take a and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, you don't like have to, right?
Yeah.
The other day when the RCMP was behind me, then I said, hey, notice the full stop.
Yeah.
So you decide. I don't
That
know.
is so
Is that a
funny.
5, a 7? Hard to know.
Yeah, I think it can be whatever you want it to be. So that's funny. All right, what is your favorite day of the week?
I'm down for all of them. They all have different things in them. I like them all.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. What
Yeah.
about your favorite junk food?
That's hard to decide. Um, Pizza?
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah.
I haven't had pizza in a long time. Okay, so two more. Do you have any reoccurring dreams or nightmares?
Not anymore, but that took me years. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's really only the last maybe 7 or 8 years where I don't. Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good that you have, yeah, come to the point where there's not a
It slowed down significantly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Okay, and then knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Oh, girl, I have a 19-year-old daughter. So, okay, let me think. Depends on the daughter too, though. What would I say? What would I say to myself though at 19? I would say, I know this seems terrifying that you feel like you're entirely on your own and you have no support system, but just lean into what you know to be true. And I do believe there's a relationship beyond myself, but I would say lean into what you know to be true and be the fullest you that you are now.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for letting me hang out with you. This was fun. A
Yeah.
delight to meet
Thank
new
you.
friends.